Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Project Ruby's engine rebuild. Just a little update just to keep you in the loop. So there'll be the first video this week as usual in the run up to Christmas. And I'm pleased to say that we have found a few things wrong with this cylinder head at the machine shop that had to be slightly corrected, but most of it is very much intact. So I'm going to show you what was the result of the machine shop and how much did it cost me. Quite an interesting one, that. Well, we're back at the famous desk, and this desk is looking a little bit more organised now. I've put all the valve related components in packages with the numbers written on post-it notes. Always prepare quite nicely. Have you noticed a brand new camshaft? Yes, this is a BGA camshaft. I didn't realise the manufacturer, but it's all wrapped in grease and it's ready to go on. The lifters were supposed to come with this order, but unfortunately, as I'm going to show you over here, my sofa, oh dear, these are not hydraulic lifters. No, someone sent me blooming engine shells for blasted BMW. Honestly, how could you get that wrong? So my order's been mixed up with somebody else's. Oh, he must be screwing, because there's about £258 worth of BMW N47 bearings there. Oh my goodness. So my tappets cost me about 40 quid, run of the mill. Probably made by BGA, knowing the supplier. Yeah, oh dear, never mind. Anyway, hello TV. That TV keeps me occupied when I do jobs like this. And it is very much what I said I would be doing. So the cylinder head has been off to my machine shop, as you can quite rightly see, for a skim, an investigation on the guides to confirm whether they're good or not, and the valve seats. Now, I was a bit 50-50 on whether the valve guides were producing enough wear. And it turns out, my machinist was very impressed actually. There's absolute minute amounts of play, and there is always a bit of play because naturally it goes through a shaft. There's going to be a clearance. Anything that goes through a shaft, like any sort of rod, like a valve, is going to have a clearance. So you're going to feel that fractionally. And he said, you're being over pedantic. There's nothing wrong with any of these. Absolutely nothing. So we know that the oil burning was definitely nothing to do with worn brass, I think it's bronze valve guides, not brass, bronze. They're soft, inherently soft. And I tell you what, punching them out is definitely an engine machine job. You cannot do that at home. In fact, if you do it on a cold cinder block, you risk cracking the casting. You've got a gouging where the valve guide absolutely pinches into that cylinder head. It is an absolute friction fit. And the only way of doing it is by heating up the cylinder head to temperature to make the cylinder head hot, and then they'll do it. But honestly, it's one of those nasty, nasty tools. I've seen YouTube videos of people do it, and I think there's a chance you'll damage your head. And this is one of the jobs that you just don't do at home. Just pay somebody to do it. And equally, getting a skim. Now, the skim was definitely needed, but I'll come to that in a second. The valve seats, as you know, were all pitted, and they have been recut to approximately 45 degrees. My machinist is one of the only few people in the West Midlands that can actually do a 3-angle valve seat cut, but it's completely unnecessary on this. You don't need to do that on most applications, because it's not a performance engine, and I made it very clear to him that's, I just want to get it working and make sure that it's not burning oil, and it will definitely be up on par. Because have you not seen the ports, guys? They are absolutely squeaky bum clean. Every single port. I'll just bring you over here. This is the exhaust side. It was so bad. You remember it? It was so bad down those things. And every morsel of bit of carbon has gone. In fact, my machinist was very impressed and asked me how I decoked this engine. And I'm sure some of you was wanting to know and ask that question last time you saw this cylinder head. Petrol, acetone and diesel. Some very heavy duty gloves, and doing it outside, naturally I can't clean this thing as much as it's a nice environment. I cannot clean it in here because my flat where I sleep is going to smell of petrol, and that is not healthy nor nothing. So there is a limit to what I do in here. I did some of the initial cleaning off of the worst bits, but then when the scrubbing down came, I was out there sitting on, well, a stool with one of these tables outside, and believe you me, I looked like a pedantic idiot. I had to cover myself up a little bit as well because it got really messy. But you can see everything for what it is, and I'm really impressed. So they were cut, and the head 100% needed a skim. In fact, he had to skim a bit further than what he would normally. As I say, he hasn't gone too far near the ports, which is a good thing, but he reported that the head was out on one side. I believe it was on the timing belt side, this side, where this space was. It was a little bit out. And remember, guys, the exhaust side, there was possible signs on the head gasket. There was compression loss at the end where you've got like a little ring that goes around. And you look at this, you can see the heart-shaped combustion chamber's really nice. It's so cool, it's untrue. This area here is just, it's compressed down into the cylinder head area, so that's why you get a circle. But you can see all the design implications of a CVH. A really, really interesting design. And obviously you've got this swirl pot design, aims to mix fuel a bit more correctly. Lean burn was the order of the day, and the Rover K series is exactly the same. Lean burn technology could have gone a lot further if it hadn't been for the EU and CATs and Euro 1, etc. So lean burn died a death, but nevertheless the technology still is very fondly remembered. So the fact that the head was a bit off in terms of a few foul more than what he wanted does suggest to me that one of the compression issues could have been the head gasket. However, I've got a feeling it wasn't, because the compression was pretty equal across the board, within 10%, and that's what you want. So it suggests that the head gasket wasn't going, but it could have gone really badly. So I'm sure that's made a lot of CVH owners a little bit wary if they're watching this. If you think that your CVH head gasket is good and your head is good, think again. Again, it's important to have lineaged the block as well. So I am going to proceed with lapping the valve. Well, what I have done, I have lapped the valves in. I'm going to proceed with actually putting the valves in. This valve is already down and the collets have been put in, hence the grease and the valve compressor. I had to buy one of these. Now, guys, I have something to report about the valve tool that I used. It was a laser CVH tool. It actually broke on me. Some of the casting wasn't very good on that tool, but I'm going to report something now. Now, I don't know whether this was related to the problem I've been having, but anyway, this is nicely seated in. The valve stem seal is seated correctly. I have bought some Victor Rines ones. I should have done this in the first place. I really should have. Now, the mistake obviously I made last time, well, it was a mistake because it was unintentional, but it wouldn't have affected things, was the washer that this sat on. It would have just sat a little bit high because you didn't need to use the washer, because that washer was part of the two-piece stem seal. This effectively replaced the stem seal and the bottom side of that washer. They're all in the bin, but that wouldn't have affected the results, and I've had that confirmed by a number of people. Bit frustrating at the time, but at the end of the day, it wasn't a critical error, because otherwise I'd have had to have taken the whole thing back off again. However, that tool did some significant amounts of damage to one particular area. You see these studs here? These studs are the rocker studs, okay? They sit in like that, okay? What's the problem with that? It's bent. Every single one of these studs was bent by the force of that CVH tool, that stem seal tool. Every single one was bent. Now you're telling me you must have used it wrong, Andrew, because plenty of people use this tool. I'm telling you, I used that tool as you saw on camera, absolutely perfectly fine. I'm sure I'm going to have to go back and watch that video as well. I'm sure some of you will as well. But honestly, I never went wrong. The tool literally sat quite equally on this cup and pushed right down. But some of the casting are given up. Look at that. That is the damage that the actual tool did to some of the casting. Where's the other one? Oh, it's here. There you go. Now that won't affect the way the rocker arms sit, by the way. But I've had a few people comment that that does happen with that tool. I wasn't happy about that. It puts a lot of undue stress on this ledge. What was the other one? Yeah, there you go. See this here? In fact, I might have to just smooth that off. That's not very good, because that's the way it's supposed to look. And that's the damage it's done to that one. So I might have to grind that back, actually. I just noticed that. I will have to probably go back over one or two things. But the consequence is, every single one of these studs are bent. Now, I'm not happy with that, because effectively, that could affect the way that the rocker arm sits. Because if the stud is bent, because it sits on a little cup, that would force the rocker arm to actually go further this way instead of this way. It should centralise quite nicely. Okay, as you can see, the wear pattern on all these is very equal. These are cleaned up so nicely. All these springs have still got the paint markings on them. And I wonder whether that's the reason why the original stem seals that I fitted, these top hat ones that are an unnamed aftermarket one, I think that's why they were chewed up. I think that rocker arm was pushing on the edge of the valve, and well, that could have necessitated in valve guide wear, but it hasn't. I don't think I've done enough miles to do that damage. So it turns out that tool, I would not recommend doing that. If you want to change the stem seals on a CVH, I'd recommend from this incident, you have to go and take the head off and do it this way with this kind of tool, okay? It's just an adjustable tool and you can do it perfectly fine. I've had no complaints about doing it that way, and that's gone in really nicely. And it's sitting nice and true. The spring is nice and straight. It's perfect. And above all else, please shine a torch through that port and check if there's any light around the valve, okay, the valve seat. If there's no light, brilliant. If there is, I think we might have to go back and lap it. Now, since the valve seats were cut, there was a little bit of lapping required, but I used a little bit of coarse, a little bit of thin, just to cut around the valve seats. And all these valves are now attuned to a particular seat. So they've all been cut in, and we've got this nice grey effect. Trust me, that took a lot of doing, that did. I think I've actually got some of the paste, so this is the paste I use. Fine that end, coarse that end, and you use one of these. Now this is one of the more basic ones, but it's done the job for me. It's done the job, bigger side and a smaller side. So that's my update, guys. So guides, good. Skim revealed an uneven head. Valve stem seals may have been chewed up by bent studs. So that tool could have caused my entire episode of burning. The burning oil could have been the stem seals, which they were the originals because they were the old type, I'm assuming. If it's not had that done, there was no evidence that this car had that tool used on it before, and there was no evidence in my book that this head has ever been off. Everything has come off is original. Those bolts look like the original 4-1s to me. I'm convinced that this is I was the first person to do the valve stem seals on this engine and the first person to take this head off. And quite frankly, that proves that those valve stem seals of 50,000 miles were the originals that I took off. Meaning the reason that this car was burning oil probably was some valve stem oil seals that were very poor indeed and leaking all the time, and not just when it was just cold. Sometimes I have a habit when the car warms up of the stem seals expanding a little bit, taking up the gap, and it's okay. It stops smoking. I think now the whole problem has been stem seals. I might be wrong, but from what I've seen in the block and from what I've seen here, It's definitely the case. But that's okay, because by doing all this, I know that I've got a good basis of an extremely good engine. One that is going to last beyond my ownership and be good for the next several custodians of this car. Although I say I'm not doing this for their benefit, I'm doing it for the car's benefit, because it needs to work. It's not a museum piece. So I'm going to leave this here. The developments are thick and fast. I'm now going to fit these stem seals right down there, and they should sit really nicely around here, and fit some more valves before it gets really dark this evening. A couple of valves a day and I'm done. I hope you've enjoyed this little episode. I found quite a few things about my engine, but you know what? I think it's all worth it, because if the car did not smoke any oil and it performed the way it did going to Kent, I wouldn't have discovered what I had discovered. So sometimes it happens for the better. Take care, guys.